Tony Soprano, Vito Corleone, Sonny from A Bronx Tale. We love our outlaws, even though they're often brutal in their actions and immoral. Still, we forgive them, and we love the shows and movies that feature them. In an unjust world, these outlaws might be the closest we ever get to feeling and witnessing some form of cathartic justice. We're forced to get this kind of satisfaction from our stories, because in real life, if there is justice, it's a slow, dissatisfying process. In fact, it's the necessary slowness of careful, responsible justice that tends to make it dissatisfying, and this process is typically carried out mechanically by institutions on our behalf, institutions which limit our ability to get justice on our own terms.
I don't want to kill him. I want to put him in jail.
Oh. Well, I know those law books mean a lot to you, but not out here. Out here, a man settles his own problems.
Just turn on the news. Like movies, the real world reduces us to mere spectators of injustice. But at least movies provide a chance to witness swift and satisfying justice. Justice obtained on the terms of the characters. The kind of justice you don't get to see very often, especially in a society where we're prohibited from seeking retribution on our own.
I said you, Liberty. You pick it up.
For better or worse, outlaws live by a different creed, taking matters into their own hands and doing things we don't dare do ourselves because they're the things that take too much nerve and that involve consequences we're not willing to accept. Of course, this leaves us stuck, relying on outsiders to enforce law and execute justice for us. But when these institutions fail or fall short in their duties, we become increasingly resentful of the lack of justice, but also of our inability to do anything about it.
You ain't even gonna whip them?
Well, I find them instead, Alice.
For what they done? Skinny, get some ponies, and that's it? That ain't fair, little Bill. That ain't fair.
And that's where cowboys, gangsters, and antiheroes come in, offering us satisfaction vicariously through their stories. And though their costumes differ, the stories are basically driven by the same thing: comeuppance. This is the appeal behind a Clint Eastwood, Sergio Leone Western, and why the idea of the corrupt or inept sheriff compels us to watch. We'd like to be Clint Eastwood in High Plains Drifter or Gran Torino, because while it's easy to be outraged about unfairness and evil, it's kind of hard to do anything about it. And when it comes to using violence, with the exception of extreme life or death situations, considering the morality and internal condition of the average citizen, violence is a strategy best avoided. But the more injustice and lawlessness is allowed to thrive, and the more corrupt our society and leadership become, the more bitter we get. And in a climate like ours, rural Old West cowboys and urban mob bosses with no F's to give become more appealing, and their actions forgivable. Not for the exclusive fact that these characters are violent, but because they can be when they need to be, or when there's no external justice to be had. Whether constrained by fear or a rare, genuine sense of courageous restraint, good people are at a distinct disadvantage to the careless ones we see in the news. And so, we like it when the bad guy encounters the no F's given anti-hero. But since street justice is rarely witnessed in real life, this is an itch that has to be scratched from our couch. So we cheer for these cowboys, and even mob bosses, when they apply their courage and play judge, jury, and executioner against evils greater than themselves. This is not the highest moral bar to clear, but it sure is a satisfying one. In cheering for the anti-hero to the extent that we do, we are conceding that nonviolence is not one of our prevailing values. The justification of violence is always negotiable and always conditional, and the condition is that the violence being exercised aligns with our own personal preferences. Most often, our support of vigilantism and violence is at best biased, and at worst partisan, especially along political lines. This indicts the majority of us as hypocritical to some varying degree, and even if you're the most ideologically consistent person you know, the chances that there aren't any inconsistencies to your worldview or sense of justice is slim. To be aware of these ideological inconsistencies, particularly when they're minor ones, is what it means to have a healthy amount of self-awareness. None of this is to encourage violence, but to acknowledge it for the tool that it is, a tool that most favor when used in their favor. With the increasing lawlessness we see in the news and on our streets, and within our hallowed, or more accurately, hallowed institutions, it's no wonder we've seen a robust amount of empathy for cowboys, mob bosses, and antiheroes. Their popularity confesses a lack of confidence in our metaphorical sheriffs. And these Clint Eastwood type characters serve an important function as a pressure relief valve for all of us living in times of insufficient justice.
You just shot an unarmed man.
Well, he should have armed himself. He's gonna decorate his saloon with my friend. I'm here to kill you, Little Bill. For what you did to Ned.
We're familiar with the expression, nature abhors a vacuum. So it's natural that, in the void created by injustice, courtesy of corrupt or deliberately ineffectual leaders, we remain drawn to Tony, Vito, Sonny, and whoever else Clint Eastwood happens to be playing. It's okay to identify with them, and understandable to root for them. Just don't internalize them. Thanks for listening.